to this also, I was gonna say oh so great podcast, but hey man, this is Bush League. This is ghetto as all hell.
Great.
Um, guys, this is Silly Whales. It definitely doesn't mean anything else. It has no other meanings, no other connotations. This is a podcast about mental health, and we discuss our journeys and the world around us and how it's changing and how we're changing or trying to change for hopefully the better. But inevitably, at one point, it will be for the worst. But at least we're not on Epstein's list.
Okay. Yeah, no. Yeah, got gratitude, fam. Gratitude.
I know, right? Well, Kevin Spacey's on the list, but he's actually didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, he's done it again.
Oh no.
Kevin Spacey has escaped again. He just I don't know, guys. Anyway, my name is Alex Cupid. I am a spoken word poet, a failed activist of sorts, and most importantly, one of the many co-hosts of this show. And I say one of the many because I don't know why I said this. There's only two of us.
Because I have so many voices in one.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Joe?
Yeah, I'm Joe Kimber. I work at a shop. Don't know what else to add about myself. I'm Alex's friend from very long time ago now. And where are we getting to now? 16 years ish?
Yeah, man.
Something like that. So I've
don't
known
like
you
how
longer than I
old-
haven't known you.
Yeah, that is because, like, for context, me and Joe met each other in school, in secondary school, and our friendship grew from there. And it's been a very long time. And here we are. We've been talking about doing this for ages, like literally years. So it's kind of weird that we actually are sat down on our respective like computers or laptops making this happen. So if you're listening to this and you hate every second of it, well, I don't blame you, but two, know that this has been a work in a lot of progress, despite making very little progress here.
Yeah, to be clear, like to give context as well, when we say, I assume what you mean is that we've been talking about doing online stuff, which we have done before. We've done online stuff before, like on YouTube. Like very little of it, but we have. And then podcasting wise, I mean, we've talked about it, but like Silly Whales as a crystallized concept, it's not that old, right? Like it's probably it's a year and a half now, a
Yeah,
half,
yeah. I
something
think
like that.
the name was very like new.
And you won me. That was it. That's all it took, to be honest. And I knew that it was potentially something that was going to be real one day.
Yeah, I was like, I need a name for a podcast, and I can't call it what I want to call it because it's really dark. But what is something that is just it describes me and you perfectly. And I remember that you have a love of otters, and I was like, I can't really call it Silly Otters because that just sounds weird.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I was like, whales. The country whales came into my head first, and I was like, I don't know how to make Silly Whales work. And I was like, no, the fucking anime idiot. And then I was like, oh, here we are.
And
I
did
got a
you
guy
tell
on Fiverr to make it.
and did you telling me the story about coming up with the name, I then thought immediately, oh, whales like screaming. And that's why that's what I signed on to, not this whale bullshit. Fuck the whales, hope they're hunted into oblivion.
They're on Epstein's list too.
Oh no.
This happened
Oh,
again.
oh no.
Oh dear.
Kevin Spacey, leave them alone. Um, so yeah,
Um,
this is yes. So that's the history of the idea of this anyway. I mean this but you and me is a long time coming, I should say.
oh yeah. Like we both have had our mental health struggles and our positives, you know. We've had our come ups and our come downs, our highs and our lows. And we figured if no one ever sees these and it gets like 10 views or like one or two views, Um, I want this to be a time capsule for whoever is around. I doubt that I'll have any sort of children, but it would be nice for someone who's younger from my family maybe to be like, hey, what did this absolute fucking idiot get up to? Um, Cataloged his his highs and his lows on a podcast
I mean,
on Spotify, on iTunes.
I'm 100% listening back to this. I don't know if you ever do this, but if I like do a voice note or I like record a video, I always listen back to it. I don't know what it is. I don't mind my own voice. Um, I just have to listen back to it, and I find it surprisingly calming for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but so I'm
I
gonna
wish I
listen.
was like you.
I don't know where it comes from. There's some weird like no, I don't know. I like some weird self-loathing that somehow disappears as soon as I feel myself doing anything interesting. That is not actually interesting. Just, just the idea of it being interesting in recorded and all that other sort of stuff. So I'm cool with this shit.
Yeah, so I'm currently editing and working on my first ever spoken word album, and guys, I hate myself, you know? Like, I truly hate the sound of my own voice. I've decided that I'm not going to listen to myself that much longer. So I'm going to hand it over to an actual production engineer to master it for me. I realize I still have to pick the takes to send to him.
Right.
So I recorded 172 bits of material in the studio. 72 of it was literally me going, testing, one, two, three, testing, final test. Let's do it now, guys.
Well,
And
why
then,
72? Why is that necessary?
because I don't know what I'm doing. And I went into a studio which is unmanned with no engineer. So I had to figure it out on the fly.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and I got it quite quickly, but then I got scared that I wasn't doing it correctly. And normally I get paralyzed with this, and I would have just kept on saying testing one, two, three. But then eventually I just went, fuck it, we kind of have to do it. So then I started to record it, and it came out quite good. The issue is that I hate my own voice, so I don't know what a good poem reading by me actually is, because, well, I just hate it. So
It's
I currently have I've I have 70 no I have 97 like poems now, well, takes of recordings of poems. So what I'm doing now is I'm just figuring out which ones are actually me reading a poem to completion and which one is me going fuck, and then just cutting it short. I'm currently at 33, and I'm at the second poem of, I think I recorded 7 or 8. It is torture.
man, that would just be I'd love to hear every moment of it. I'm not gonna lie to you. But I know you wouldn't want me to hear it anyway. Well, probably
I feel
wouldn't.
like you would enjoy the opening, like the intro to the intro, which I probably won't release anywhere, because literally it's just me going, there's a camera in this room. It's probably watching me go crazy. And I was thinking, like, they must have so many motherfuckers come into that studio and going, and just sitting there and just freaking the fuck out. Like,
Oh God, yeah.
and I was saying, if I become like, I don't know, mayor of a road, that's literally what I said in the actual recording.
Okay.
Um, if I become the mayor of a road, they will use this against me. And I'm like, actually, I've done so much stupid shit in my life, and I think everyone has it to this point now. Like, I go to the gym, and a lot of people like who I work with, I coach football and stuff like that. They're afraid of going to the gym because there's of course been the recent trend on social media of people recording other people in the gym. So these are teenagers who are afraid of doing something to better themselves because of a fear of people with mobile phones. And I was like, that fear is like everywhere if it exists for you, you know? Like
Mate,
you're
I never even thought about the
walking
fact
down the,
that people get like you know, recorded at gyms and stuff. Like I never even considered that was a that would be a thing that people would be like, oh yeah, no, that's obviously not. I don't like that. And I'm like, Oh yeah, you were just saying it. I couldn't believe it, but of course
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
Man,
It's like
ugh.
it's a whole like you not being on social media is the biggest blessing for yourself ever. Like the amount of vitriol someone can whip up towards somebody else is wild. Like so, there's this guy called Joey Swole, and he exposes people who take videos of other people in the gym, and it's like he does a really good thing because it takes those gym fails videos and it goes, hey, you're a dick for taking that video rather than actually helping the person who's maybe having, a difficulty at the gym or maybe just not doing something correctly. And I'm like, well, this is what we need. But also, there's one Joey Swole and hundreds of people looking for attention on social media.
Yeah,
Hundreds, thousands, one could say even millions. Like, and I find that I can understand why young people now go, hey, I don't want to do something like going to the gym. I don't want to do anything that makes me look bad, you know? Everyone wants to
yeah,
present the finished product.
yeah. I think that's. I mean, I don't think I ever would have really gotten into Instagram or TikTok or anything quite. You know, for context, I don't have really like an internet presence and a social media presence. Um, I barely had any sort of association with Facebook, and that's pretty much it. But I have a crippling interaction with YouTube, but that's a whole another thing. But I don't have like like an outward profile to people. This is the biggest, well, not the biggest profile, I suppose, but like the most obvious example of a profile where it's like people are going to hear me and they can react to it. But you know, I don't really care, but I hate to imagine that, like, oh, imagine I didn't get into that sort of Instagram game and all of that stuff, but in the way that young people have that, or the way in which they have to kind of like interact through that way, mate, I would have suffered so much because back in the day, like, I don't remember us having it mattering that much. Like, it mattered a little, but not really. Like, if you didn't have much of a Facebook presence, it wasn't that big a deal. Nowadays, I feel like it's much more limiting, or that like people, if something happens in your school and then someone takes a video of it or a picture of it or whatever of something you did, like, it, even if you're not even actively looking at it, like, everyone's going to have seen it. Whereas back then our technology just wasn't in the place for it, and the culture definitely wasn't there for like that level of, you know, surveillance and so on. So mate, fuck, even if you don't, even if you're not aware of it, I feel like it does come for you. So that's a blessing I've thankfully like got out got out from. And probably I would feel a lot more self-conscious about myself if that was true. Like, going forward in life, if that had been the case. I
Yeah,
don't know if
yeah.
I don't know if I would have felt comfortable about doing something like this. Um, Honestly, thinking about it.
In terms of mental health journeys, myself and Joe have both been through quite a lot. This I'm gonna include a little introduction at the beginning, which I was supposed to do, but I didn't do. We're gonna discuss heavy topics throughout this like podcast series. We're gonna try and do this weekly. I don't know if we can. I don't know if we will, but the main thing is that, as I said at the beginning, a kind of a journal of what we're dealing with and what we're trying to battle through. And I'm gonna give you a brief, I don't know, maybe a brief, maybe not so brief, who knows, insight about me a little bit. So I have ADHD, and I also have a diagnosis of autism. Oh, this is gonna kill me in the future. Like, and there's a lot of like stigma surrounding it. I'm very, how do I say this in a politically correct way? I'm also a black man who doesn't appear to have any of those things. You wouldn't know if you saw me in person. You listen to me now, you probably wouldn't know. No one really knows. I have to tell people, and when I tell people, then they're like, "Oh my goodness, what the fuck?" Or they act like they knew all along, and then I want to kill them. But like,
Yes,
you
yes.
know, it's like, so I have these things. I got my ADHD diagnosis really late, and it was one of like a really difficult thing to deal with. It still is a difficult thing now to deal with. I still suffer from depression, anxiety, like suicidal thoughts and all that stuff. And part of my like whole journey was at one point I was really active in like mental health activism and making like awareness for mental health and things like that. And I still am, but the way I'm doing it kind of changed because kind of don't like the whole mental health awareness messaging. I think it's super easy to be like, hey, look, mental health is this. Yay! And then forget about it. Or like, if you are in trouble, just talk to somebody. Yay! But they don't like calling Samaritans, for example, and I know there's someone who's called Samaritans, is an anxiety inducing experience because you're calling someone you don't know, talking to someone you don't know, and you're seeking help for something that you probably don't know. And it's really difficult to actually point people in the direction of who to talk to and how to talk to. Like, oh, talk to a close friend or relative or a loved one. But like, that's all well and good, but those people don't know how to talk to you, you know? And there's no like, there's very little emphasis on being the person to be spoken to. Like, there's very little information of like, hey, if someone talks to you about their mental, this is how you can help and support them. And this is what you can say. These are things that you maybe shouldn't say. I've only seen a handful, and I feel like there's just not enough of that. So we have right now a lot of people who overshare on public forums, or we have people who just don't really check to see if the person who's they're talking to is actually emotionally available for that conversation. And that's kind of gotten me a little bit like riled up in a way. And I'm bringing this to the fore because Sea Wales is that. So you, as a viewer, as a listener, you can opt out of this, and I'm not going to be like, hey, you've left me for dead. Fuck you. I'm not going to do that at all. And hopefully neither is Joe, but I can't speak for Joe. Maybe he's already found your location. Hopefully you're using a VPN. like,
Oh shit, the IP
um,
is gone.
yeah, like, you know, it's okay if you're listening to this and you go, they're talking about killing themselves. I'm gonna hop out. It's okay if you listen to this and say, hey, they're talking about like, um, Alex is being a victim of harassment or whatever. I'm gonna hop out. That is okay. The last thing I want is for you to feel like you have to listen to this. Especially if you maybe you like the first, maybe you like this episode, you want to listen to the second one. You don't have to. You can skip episodes. You can dip in and dip out. But for the most part, that is me. That is my mental health. And I don't know why I nearly said shit. Like, do you remember Elliot Hulse's dad?
Yes.
Yeah. That's gonna
Fair.
be a whole episode. That is gonna be a whole fucking episode. I'm gonna make an episode on Elliot Hall specifically, and
Oh,
just like,
okay.
well, all of those guys. But yeah,
Sure.
Joe, what's your shit?
Um, yeah, so um, I have also been diagnosed with autism. ADHD, I haven't quite, though. I'm thinking about looking into it more, though I haven't like actually done anything for that. I quite similarly had a diagnosis very late, not ADHD, but autism. It genuinely, I was just thinking about it while you were saying, while you were talking about your late diagnosis. I realized that it was the middle, or it's like April, May of 2020. What a time to have that like truly become, a thing. In fact, actually, the diagnosis probably didn't come until June, and the actual like the beginnings of phone interviews started happening in like April, May. Um, for context as well, I initially started looking into this in oh my God, 2018, I think. and had a triage in 2019 in February. It took over a year before they got back to me after confirming by triage that I probably should look into, I should be going into this. It took a whole year and 2 months before someone then contacted me and then said, "Hey, let's start doing some phone interviews." So it's quite a long wait and quite a weird time in my life in general. Um, Prior to that, uh, there was never any diagnosis. I've never been on any medication either. Quite important, I think, for the maybe the context of this conversation going forward, because that will naturally come up in this. I've never had any medication for things, but I've suffered from depression, general anxiety. Um, all of these things were like most of this stuff came from uh, diagnoses that were essentially like tests I was asked to do in very specific moments, or was stuff that I did on my own, and also just my own personal experience listening to or reading about the symptoms and so on, or the things that you associate with it. Back then, I thought of it more symptomatically as I do now, um, but it was certain. Uh, it was certainly a long journey, and I don't, and even, and I started suffering from it definitely when I was quite young, probably about 7 or 8. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was like year 3 of primary school, which in the UK is about 7, 8, maybe 7, 8, 9. I can't remember exactly, but it's one of those years. And genuinely, I didn't believe my mum when she came to me talking about that I might have depression when I was like 14. And it wasn't until I was about 14, 15 that I started to believe her. And as I started to read more and she started showing me stuff, so a huge aspect of my mental health journey, so to speak, has really come from other people kind of interacting with me, which I not necessarily that they were the best at doing it, kind of as Alex was describing, like the way in which you interact with people with mental health issues and stuff like that. I think it is quite complicated and also something that's genuinely difficult for people who don't have those issues, whether neurotypical or otherwise. If you don't have a particular kind of issue, you don't quite understand the extent of how that issue would affect you. I could even say, for example, it's a bit like the best analogy I can come up with is that we've all felt the pain of, like, we've all felt kind of like the closest thing to the severest pain we've ever felt. Some people might have felt more severe pain, but we all know what pain is. And I might think, oh, well, oh, you're feeling pain. I know what pain feels like, but I can't for the life of me actually recall in my head what pain feels like. It's too transient in my head anyway. So for me, I'm looking at this person. I'm having to like cognitively tell myself that person's in pain. Make sure you're careful around them about doing this thing. But I have to. But it's because of such experience myself that I at least have even the notion of what to do, even though I can't make myself feel that way. And I would imagine that, and I've had moments, in fact, with Alex where I felt a lot better with my life, or things have been going well for me emotionally. And he'll talk to me about something, and I'm like, and then it occurs to me that I felt all of this, but I can't quite remember it. I can't quite bring it to mind. I don't have like the it doesn't like manifest itself in me in such a way that I can like understand what to do, not to do, etc. Like I have to think now, how do I act with Alex? That's a weird situation to be in, especially if you have, like I said, I was probably about 7 or 8, so it's been about 2 decades of time, where I could directly say that I had such a thing, like things like depression, anxiety, and that it's just fluctuated over periods of that time. It's much less nowadays than it was when we were in secondary school. Man, that was awful. Primary school I hated. Secondary school I hated. University I was suffering immensely. And it wasn't until 21 that things started to mellow out, and I don't know why. Which is not exactly the thing you want to be telling people on a mental health podcast, where you're like, something happened when I was 21. Not quite sure what was going on. There's
Yeah.
like there's like a few things here and there that I could maybe like point towards, but that's not an enjoyable. I don't think anyone wants to hear that. I should be clear, and I don't particularly. If I was listening to someone, they were just like, "Oh yes, at one point it got a bit better." that's not what I want to hear. Except I will only point out that that does mean that it can come without you realizing. That's the hope definitely is there that things will improve. And the reality is that I have I had been steadily improving, not necessarily in the way I felt, but in the way I was able to act in the things that I was, I've always had a problem to an extent of being independent and doing things on my own. And definitely that was something that upon actually that improving did mean that while I was suffering and things were becoming difficult and I wasn't necessarily looking after myself very well, I had su- I had learned things, but I was also getting support from around me. In general, I was supported by friends. I had friends that was nearby, or I had like my parents and so on. So for a lot of people, that's not necessarily going to be the same. So and just in general, none of what we talk about. I think we spoke about this, Alex. That like nothing that we talk about is like us talking about it from like a psychologist perspective. We're we're kind of talking about this from the perspective of what we possibly can and trying to and what we've extrapolated from our own experiences outward. And I've listened to other people talk about mental health, their own experiences and so on and stuff. So there's something I can bring to the table in a general sense. But I think the goal of this is to kind of talk about where a kind of a not too generic expression of mental health, but actually try to more specifically derive what we can from what we've learned, from what we've experienced, and as we're going forward, talking about, you know, what has been helping us, what hasn't been helping us, and to an extent, that would actually be nice to listen back to, so I can remind myself what's good, what's good, a good thing to do, and not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an interesting project, a happiness project almost. Not that I have like a hugely what's the I can't really think of a good word for it, but like I don't think happiness is a very achievable goal. I think happiness has been shown to be one of these weird things that has been sort of a problematic like the evolution of the language around happiness has like really gotten into like dark and problematic territory, I think, and something that could be sold to you. We're not trying to sell you that sort of thing. We're merely trying to sell you. We're not selling you anything. Fuck off. I don't want to sell you. I don't want you to buy anything off of me. I think it's literally we just want to buy ourselves a moment to speak, and it's that's the honestly the best I can hope for. Um, yeah, and similarly, I think you already mentioned that we'll probably talk about dark topics and things like that. We have been talking to each other for years about this sort of thing. I have, I'm largely quite an open character, um, as far as like talking about some of this stuff when the occasion arises. That's a point that we'll eventually get to, I'm sure, in other episodes. But the the primary sort of the primary thing I will say is that like we won't really hold back from talking about our own stuff, but we will always try to couch it, I think, with some reckoning that like and we might even laugh about it. I mean, there's no doubt we'll fucking laugh about it. We have done, but there's going to be moments where we might say like, hey, this understand this is what we mean by this, or how we understand it to be, when this is a joke we're making, but we're not like directly saying that like this. We're not directly having a laugh about this really tragic. I'm not laughing at Alex for like racial abuse he's experienced, for
No,
example.
but I'll laugh
Uh,
at myself.
exactly, and I'll laugh with him. So so yeah, it's yeah, not really. I don't think either of us was really discussing our history as such, because I think that's what we're going to talk about that anyway. But as a minor thing, should we say we haven't said where we like how like where we grew up and stuff, but should we even mention that? Is that even relevant? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah, sure. I'm born and raised in London, from London, Hackney specifically. East London. And you, when did you come to London again? When did you move to London?
I was born in London.
You were born in London, yes, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
I
asked that
just
question.
never saw you.
I think it's because like it's I'm also from Hackney. I think there's like I have like a weird. Effectively, I'm Tiger Woods. Like I look like I'm from three or four different countries, um, but at the core of it, I'm very much a black man. I think like the issue was that I was like technically could be an American national. Um,
Yes, I think you told me a story once upon a time when we first met each other, and it's just stuck in my head that it's like a big deal, like for some reason, and I've never been able to get rid of it. Like I don't know why.
yeah, I think I think that's a lot of it. Like I think you're mentioning a bit, and I realize something. I might cut out. Like this is for future me. I might cut out half of the topic of like the masculinity stuff. Everything we said around it was gold. um, and I might get us to revisit that another day. But
Yeah, okay.
I think like what you just said summarized what I wanted from this podcast effectively. Um, when I remember when I met you, I didn't know anything about you, but I was like, oh, this is gonna be like a guy I'm friends with for forever, and we 100% have gone through our own trials and tribulations individually and together, and I remember like through the worst parts of my life, you were there, and through the worst parts of yours, I kind of came in towards the end. And I've always hated myself for that. And I was like, because like your university struggles was something I wasn't a part of. And you telling me about that later on, and you only told me about it properly like 2 years ago. Um, it was heartbreaking to hear. And it, I think we were at such different places when we were both 21 years old. It was like a lot of pressure and there wasn't a lot of clarity. I've noticed. Like even now, like I look back at me being 21, it feels like such a long time ago.
It does, man.
You know,
It does.
um, and out of our little friendship group between like myself, you, Toga, like we have our friend Samson, who we have Samson's gone missing somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, you know, your friend because now you've moved up to like the Midlands area. Um,
Yeah, I live in Worcester. It's fine. It's fine.
yeah, you live in Worcester, like you have your friend like Kestis, you know,
Hmm.
and found out that name is actually really common, so I don't have to worry about that. um,
Okay.
like uh, I was the youngest, and it was very evident, and I still look like a child of, and it happens a lot, and I think about like my mental health journey. A lot of it comes from the fact that I still look like I'm 16 years old. I was at an open mic a couple of days ago, and it wasn't. I didn't perform. I got there late, but a guy came up to me. He's like, "What year are you in?" And I was like, "What? Yeah, what year are you in?" And I was like, "Year? Yeah, what? Like what year? You in year 10, year 8, year 9?" I was like,
Come on, really?
I was like, "Nigga, I'm 26."
You
He's
know?
like, "Yo, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I'm like, I wore like my fucking like my I look grown up jacket and everything like that. Like I wore boots, I wore jeans, not a single football shirt in sight. Like and and guess what? That guy was 15 years old and he thought I was in the same year as him.
Oh my God.
I was like, go fuck. Like, yeah. I was like, and then like today, we're getting some carpet. Like we got our stairs done in our home, and like I'm packing stuff up because I don't really have anything left in London to accomplish technically. So I've been looking at places up in Worcester actually, um, and I was just like getting things together, and I was like, oh, these guys have to come back and finish the carpet. So I took a walk over there before I went to the gym, and they were like, yeah, but let us know when your mum is back in the country, and then she can come and do. It. I was like I'm 26, nigga, like. And then like I go to buy an energy drink at Tesco and like, can I see some ID please? I'm like, This is happening.
I'm trying
Like,
to think if I didn't know you, would I ID you if you came into my shop today? I'm trying to imagine, would I consider IDing you? Like, it's hard to it's hard to remove that. I'm like,
I
okay,
think
let
it
me think of
depends on what I'm wearing. If I'm wearing a football shirt, I think you have to ID me. If I'm wearing like one of my vests, you can't. I don't like. I'm not saying I'm like a big massive bodybuilder, but I do not have. I have the face of a 16-year-old for sure. Fine. My hair's rarely ever combed. Fine. I'll give you that. But my overall physique does not scream 16 years old.
no.
It's you know it it screams like 21.
It's
um,
it definitely does not scream pubescent child. Like it absolutely screams adult. It's without question. Without
it's my
question.
face. It's a little bit of like because there's people who I work with, kids are teenagers, and side by side, I look like I'm one of their friends. So it's like it's a constant struggle here because when I coach football, for example, the kids look older than me. So like we
Yeah.
go into a game and the opposition manager comes up. He's like, "Which one of you guys are the coach?" The motherfucker wearing the clear, obvious coaching uniform that says "coach" on the back. You know, like three of my players have beards, like full on beards, and I don't, and they're like fucking 16 years old. I'm like, oh, for fuck.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, the lack of facial hair really doesn't help, to be fair.
I'm trying, okay? Like, I've never been able to grow a beard. It's just, I don't, yeah.
That's fine. Don't need to grow a beard.
But I've always wanted a beard, Joe. You know, a beard is like
Uh,
the thing I've always wanted. Like when like our friend Toga, like he's got really short, like he's like I don't want to say it, like he's losing his hair, but he's Turkish, which means he has like the full on beard, and he looks like he will murder you because on principle, because like he has the angry like man look, and I'm like, that's a like look, that's a guy you don't want to fuck with. And when you have your beard out, I'm like, that's a guy you look like a fucking lumberjack. And I'm just like, when am I
skinny
gonna
ass.
get this? Like my older brother got his first beard at like he got his late as well, like 20, well, 26, 27. I'm like, my time is now, right? My
It's
time is now.
just around the
Nothing.
corner.
I don't think so. I think I'm literally gonna be um like fresh faced and you know let's say black don't crack. It's not going to have opportunity to crack at this point. So
I'm gonna say you do have very good skin. Like you do have like you don't have skin like me or like old like people who look older tend to, which is a good thing. That's good. But yeah, you do look. I like think the problem is I remember what you looked like when you were 16. So for me, like
same.
you look so different between those two in my head, but there's so many differences. But none of those like necessarily mean up like in age. It necessarily means better looking.
Ah,
It's more linear. It's more like linear rather than oh no sorry it's more horizontal like you know from a changeover rather than it being like you know a vertical like incline up the age bracket I guess it's hard to say.
it's like I do Muay Thai, and I was like, we were doing these drills, and this guy was like, "Yeah, like how old are you, mate?" And I was like, 26. He went, "Fuck off." I'm like, "I will, I will." Like, it's like, oh, because like I was about to say you're really good, like for your age. I'm like, so I'm not good for my age anymore. It's like,
uh,
oh, it's like, and that's something like I take, like I'm taking really seriously at the moment. Like I've always been like a bigger guy, so I like set a challenge. I'm going to lose this amount of weight. I'm in the gym like at least 3 days a week doing certain programs, and even at the gym, like I'm just like I'm working on my deadlifts and getting my deadlifts like my weight up in deadlifts, and I'm working on that a lot. And the guy was like, yeah, but like at your age, you should be that's like should be the number you're hitting. I'm like, I'm actually 26. And the guy was like, well, that's still a good weight, you know? Like people peak different. I'm like, so I said, how old do you think I am? He said, oh, about 18, 19. I'm like, that's better than most people give me. but it doesn't help.
Mm.
The minute I put on shorts and like any sort of shirt that isn't a black slim fit, people just go, yeah, he's like a teenager.
I mean, now I'm just imagining you in a black slim fitted shorts and just like the menace, the menace I see coming towards me.
The menace to society, you know?
That's
But
some
but,
that's some energy right there.
even then, like, and it was difficult because like I dealt with like I didn't know how to segue into this, but it did it itself. Like, I dealt with like harassment and all that stuff. Like, and part of dealing with that was when I had to phone the police and deal with this. They immediately went, oh, they came around and they were like, do you have any like parents we can talk to? And I was like, what? Like, and I was just like, okay, cool. And then I realized my age and things like that. And then I was discussing it with them. And this is where like you're typing something.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
I'm
sure.
typing
Okay.
something. What do you? Why'd you bring attention to it?
I was like, I was like, no, I was like, uh, how do I? It's like, what's happening? He's typing. No, I was like as we're approaching like the closing bit here, like I was dealing with a lot of just harassment over the past 3 or 4 years, and and I came here. I'm looking at the stack of fucking papers. I'm like, I'm gonna expose like this. I'm gonna talk about this. I'm gonna do, and then before we started, I was like, I'm gonna have a shower, and just like crying in the shower, Joe. I spent about 4 years just being constantly harassed by what I thought was one person turns out to be four plus. And you saw it firsthand. If you know me
Mhm.
personally, then you saw it firsthand. And it was like a lot to deal with and there's a lot to cope with. And to this day, I still get messages. Now it's focused on like, it's very racially based at the moment. And um, I look at the stack of papers and it has like my witness statement, has the police report, it has a letter from the police saying that the person who did it has been formally warned. I have four of those letters because they've been warned 4 times. I have the official police caution. I've got like just a mountain there, and I was just thinking to myself, after all of this, why are you gonna post a podcast discussing mental health on social media? And I realized that I don't live for them, and that was part of my problem in life. I spent like a better part of 4 years barely living a life, and it was the reason why Silly Worlds exists is because the concept of this is I stopped living, and I had bad things happen to me in threes. It seems like, right? My uncle passed away like middle of November, and I said I need to discuss this, but there was no one was really around. Everyone sort of like left, and I posted it on Instagram as my first post, and straight away I got a message from someone saying, "Oh, you're a stupid nigga." I was like, "Fuck, great, cool." And then it started again, it started again, started again, started again, and it kept on doing it. And they couldn't message me, so they had to use the Instagram like business inquire page because my account is a public figure account, and fuck me, it was unrelenting. Like you're gonna join your uncle in hell, and this that hang yourself, you're a coon, like all of the racial like slurs in the world. And then I broke down. It was bad. That was one. Back in September, somebody messaged me and they said, I hope you fucking die, you homophobic slur nigger. They sent it from their actual account by accident. And I just kept it there for an hour and I didn't respond. And I went, wrong account, mate. And straight away, because I remember my partner at the time, I was on the phone to her when it came in. I just went silent. She's like, "Hey, what the fuck are you?" Like minus she don't swear like that, but
She doesn't talk like that in general.
she doesn't talk like that at all. Um, like I just I just internally, I didn't tell her, and that was a mistake on my part. And I was like, I can't tell her what's happened because in my head, my problems don't matter. And I got a stream of those messages in September, and the guy was then going, "Oh, I got hacked. It wasn't me." And I was like, "I know it's you because I post an Instagram story, and that's all I did. I posted Instagram stories up until that post about my uncle, and you're the first one to view it." And it was like, "Well, that doesn't mean anything." And I was like, "I could tell everyone that it's you." And then he throws down a trump card of destiny. He goes, "If you do this, I'm gonna cause harm to myself and somebody else." So then I phoned the police, and the police come around. I phoned the police 3 days later. Now, I'm not telling my partner any of this at the time, my partner any of this. The police tell me off for not contacting them straight away. Then to this day, I still get the racist abuse, but it's not from that person at all. It's from somebody else. And I'm just like, okay, this is the shit we're dealing with, right? And I'm just thinking about all this now. I'm like, what exactly, like, why would you even spend your time doing that to somebody? But focusing on me now, I spent 4 years of my life hiding because of that. I just, you know, I'm not crying, you are.
Did you say three things, by the way? Because you said everything comes in threes, but I feel like you said two
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Like, well, like, um, does a relationship ending doesn't I don't really care. Like as
Ah, okay.
like I do care. It's a problem. Um, but also I can't like it's a bad thing. Yeah, that's the three.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Like there's a lot. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's like a big issue for me. I think the issue for me is that like it was 4 years of this shit, and it hurt me a lot, and it hurt people around me a lot. And it the issue I have with it now is that in September when I got that original message, like I I felt like at the time my partner like she didn't need to hear it because my problems don't matter and it's not relevant. Like it felt like there was no room for that to exist, and it was breaking me slowly. And it was so, like so many other things I couldn't be as emotionally vulnerable as I could, and it just like hurt us, it hurt me, it hurt her, it hurt everyone around. But what it actually did was it broke me to a point where I reverted back to just acting like I was strong.
Hmm.
And turns out when you act like something, you're not something. And it took another friend of mine to, like, in early November, to be like, yo, you've been like this for 4 years. You are a dead man walking. So when I see you, I barely see you. It's just a version of you. And it's either you have a choice to make in how you live your life because right now you're not living. You're not alive. You're just waking up and you're doing things. So either you make the change and you start doing something, or something really bad is going to happen to you. And the last thing anyone needs is you not being here.
Agreed.
And that broke that broke the camel's back. And I was like, I'm not gonna let this dictate my life in that way. Is hurt a lot. And look at that stack of paper and I could be like, oh, I could do this, I could do that, I don't need to. I don't need to. It's just this is a this is it. Like, we
Mm.
go from here and
It's a new year, it's a
yeah.
new beginning, it's a new
Ah,
thing we're
fuck New
doing.
Year's shit. I hate all that shit.
Mate, well, you
But
can't help it, we're doing it. That's
yeah,
what's
we are.
happening.
we did start this on the 4th of January. So, but yeah, um, I don't know, man. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I have nothing like that at the moment. That's which I can count. I've had other things more recently with uprooting and shifting my life to where I wanted it to. Eh, Nothing like what you're dealing with because that's your life being uprooted by other people, which is a very
Do you know what?
different
I would say,
experience.
I'm gonna say dealt with. I'm gonna
Mm.
say dealt with because it's now in the past. Like I got a diagnosis of PTSD very early on. Um, I was given a social worker, which is weird and strange to do, to discuss
Oh,
openly.
interesting. Yeah.
Um, and this happened like 3 or 4 years ago now. And I got my social worker. It, it like now would be approaching 2 years, and I haven't been able to like appreciate really good people in my life, and because of this, and it's hurt. And there was a time where like every single day, I would get a message of some sort, and I like it was just it felt like what I was dealing with didn't matter to people. And now here we are, we're doing a fucking podcast, and I am so fucking open with my shit now. I'm so like emotionally vulnerable, but also I'm actually available. So
Mm.
I can actually have like these conversations where I take in shit and actually like understand what's happening. And it took a while to fucking get there. But
Yeah.
that conversation where my friend said, "You're a dead man walking," and like this, like she literally said to me, "Hey, you are you're like someone sent a message and it's breaking you, and you're not telling your partner because what you think that they don't care? Of course they fucking care. They're with you, you know."
Yeah.
And it that and therapy, it woke me up. It did. But hey,
A good point to point. A good thing to point out. You have actually been having therapy more recently, something which I
oh
haven't
yeah,
had in the way that you've had, but like it's seemingly been very good as well. Like not literally changing everything because that's not how that works, but like having that opportunity to just talk to someone in that way. And I mean, if it's helped you become more easily able to open up and feel, a kind of reciprocity from that experience, then that's brilliant.
yeah, like it's done that. Like you know, I it sounds weird to say, I do matter in the world, and if something happens to me, people will care, and that is something I did not believe, um, literally at all, up until middle of November. I was building towards it. I was working towards it. I was on a journey towards it, but it took a last minute push from people. Like, well, from one person made a big push. Therapy made a really big push in that week, and then my uncle passing away, funny enough, tipped it over the edge where I was like, I need I need to progress with life, and I'm happy I'm doing it with you. I'm happy that I'm like working in a positive direction for the first time in what feels like forever. And to anyone listening to this, I don't know how much I'm gonna edit this all out, but like you matter in the world, and I want you to know that you matter, and I want we we want you to know that whether you like this show, you hate this show, just try your best to enjoy it, man. Enjoy the life we have here, okay?
I
Um,
don't. He can't speak for me. I don't. I don't feel that way. No, no. I love you. You know that.
yeah,
I
man.
it's this has been a long relationship which has meant the world to me. And doing this is really. I don't know if I ever really expected it to get to this point where we would actually be kind of talking about this in this way. But like it's been, it's. I mean, yes, to in all realness, like I don't know if I expected to reach this point in life at a certain point in my life. So like this is obviously like that there's a gratitude is the wrong word for it. There's an essence of understanding of where I am now, which is a terrible sentence. Um,
That sounded great to me.
um, there's a recognition upon myself in existence at this moment where I feel uh, I, I, it's it's hard to say, like, but there's lots of quotes that people talk about and say, and there's ways that people can feel this in the moment where they kind of are just aware that they're existing, and they're aware that they're alive, and they're aware, and they look around and it feels weird, and they or they're like in a conversation and they're listening to someone and they just feel the moment, and it feels like everything led to either this moment or just led to the larger construct of their journey and the flow of time and everything that just feels not right, but somehow that like it all makes sense. And and that somehow like and there's a sort of like wink towards the future of like I'm curious where this goes, but there's never like a real obsession. It's more like a genuine enjoyment of what's happening right this moment and now. And like I mean, I want to have the next episode that we do. I want to talk so much about that whole experience of realizing that you matter, because my God, was that a long time thing, and I forget it on a daily basis. As even now, even though I recognize it, like I almost recognize it like cognitively that that's true, and I will just forget emotionally that that's true so often. That's a whole thing I want to talk about, but it's like a real I think a real almost like anchor point to reality in life and everything that everyone that you engage with and feel any connection to. And if you don't feel those connections, then just the experience of your waking moment that like it's a very important thing, and I really appreciate that this is happening. I really appreciate sitting down in this moment, even though I'm not next to you talking to you, which I wish this was a like a we were sitting in a lounge and we just had like audio technicians around us fucking like working this out while we
I'll
just sit
come.
back
That'll come, and that'll come.
and do whatever the fuck we want, just talking to each other. Like this is still good enough. Like, you know.
Like the journey that we've both taken. I've rambled on the last few minutes, but from having police reports to having to caution people who have been harassing and being, awful to me, to realizing that to refusing to talk and be open with people who I love or like who I love and loved, um, to acting like we're made from stone, um, to understanding and realizing, oh, okay, I actually was a victim of something and I have PTSD and I need to heal, to where I am now, where after like 3 or 4 years, I'm alive again. It feels
Mm.
like, I have a tear in my eye, more than one, and it's like that's the journey that I've been on, and then I see the journey that you've been on, and I'm just like, well, my cat's meowing at me. Fuck you, piece of shit.
I'm
Can't you see
alive
I'm being
too.
emotional? Yeah, for how long? Like, you know, uh, nah, like, and then like seeing your journey as well. I've seen it up close and personal for the most part. I'm like, yeah, we're at this point because well, there's no reason why we're just here.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think that might be the good time to end. And let's see what I need to. Oh yeah, yeah. I'll beat myself for this bit. Album coming out. It's called the Happiness Project. We referenced it earlier. Um, maybe I've edited that bit out. Who knows? But yeah, that's coming out hopefully by the end of this month. I'm trying to get it all mastered and all that stuff. Um, this will be uploaded onto most places you can get podcasts on. Instagram at I am Alex Cupid, and that's where I'll probably post a few clips. I expect the clips to be more shut up, cat. To be more like spreading than the actual podcast itself to begin with, and that's fine. We are going to improve audio wise. Um, I'm gonna maybe buy Joe a microphone, whatever, as a late
I can
Christmas
buy my
present.
own mic, mate. Just you don't have
True.
to.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point, you know? But yeah, guys, if you're struggling with anything at all, there are options. I know I shat on Samaritans earlier. I didn't mean to shit on them. A very useful resource, very useful. The anxiety to speak about it is a problem, but if you can overcome that, Samaritans is there for you. There's also various numbers like Young Minds have a decent service as well. There's also a texting service. There's your GP. There's so many ways you can actually access mental health support. If you also just want to vent about something, you can shoot me an email at the Prince of Hearts, Alex Cupid at gmail.com. Um, I'm not even gonna explain it. Just it is what it is. Um,
The Prince of Hearts, Alex Cupid
at gmail.com.
at
You can
gmail.com. Okay.
you can send me an email. A few years back, I was getting loads of emails like that as well. So I'm more than happy to do them. If you want it to be read out for whatever reason, then you can. No one's gonna send me an email to begin with, but hey,
Also, no, I assume no like promises that if someone asks something to be read out or whatever that it will be. It's just in maybe it's helpful for a discussion point or whatever. I imagine in the future that we might be like, hey, this is something that, or if it's like a question or something that we actually like, I don't know, feel somewhat capable of like talking around, not even necessarily answering, but just talking around. Then yeah, that could be a thing.
yeah. But yeah, all in all, guys, I think that there's a lot to actually be taken. We've been talking for 1 hour 17. I think that I'm probably gonna cut off a whole middle chunk of this, guys. So it'll probably only be like 45 minutes long. In which case, great shit. Enjoy it. Um, Anything else, Adjo?
um, you can find me on nothing because I'm not interested in being found. But no, I think maybe I mean maybe I'll get more involved in certain things, but I'm going to keep my shit to I'm pretty much just not interested in that sort of side of things. So yeah, not too much. It's I can't really explain in any number of small. My God, you can see it already happening. That I can't, in a small number of words, really explain what I mean. It's a thing that you'll notice over the course of this series. Um, that I will struggle to explain anything within a brief, succinct sentence, and when it does, it's kind of a miracle. So I nothing more can be said from my part than there's a lot more to understanding yourself than you think there is. And there's a lot more of you to understand than you think there is. And just as much as there is, just as much as you feel you don't understand other people, there is like just as much you're not getting on your own side. And in many ways, like both the experience of others and the experience of yourself, there's a relationship there with the positive ways in which that can benefit you and other people go comes from that understanding. So if we can help you with some understanding of people, or if our experiences help give you an understanding of yourself, that's all we want to be doing, and that's all I'm happy. That's that's such a nice thing to do. That's such a I just like conversation being a way to heal people, and that's kind of that's what we're going for. It's certainly not. We're really just trying to do the bare, simplest minimum of just having a conversation, and we'd love to have people talking to us back in ways if it's if that's a genuine like thing that we actually start doing and start having that then. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is all sort of free form, I believe. Like largely
Yeah.
speaking,
I
we'll have
forgot
like
to
maybe
record the intro
yeah.
bit. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna stop this and go quickly record that and then go. So I'm gonna end this podcast by saying what I'm now gonna try and say at the end of every single poetry performance. I'm gonna take I can't say we're gonna take 2 steps to the rear and get out of here. We're in the wind. See ya.
Bye.